all been talking about metropolitan cities, city regions, and what has been happening in the country for so many years. And we have ourselves kept a tab. Marco made a very interesting observation today, and he said that these political changes which we seek appear to be more a supply side response rather than a demand side. When in 1992 the Constitution 73rd and 74th amendments became law, and even 2-3 years earlier when Rajiv Gandhi made an attempt to push those amendments, and then as a result of that, he won it in the Lok Sabha but lost in the Rajya Sabha. And subsequently, when the amendments came in, the government by and large found it more convenient to declare victory rather than join the battle, because that is something very, very convenient. But over the past 10 years or more, as we have been monitoring the progress of this, it's quite clear that there is not much of a demand side for decentralization. And so as a result of that, this has had a very uneven course of implementation across the country. The metropolitan region, or a special arrangement, was also one such leap of faith as part of the constitutional amendment. And it is obvious that we have not made much of a progress. I think in the opening day itself, when my colleague Partha Mukhopadhyay made that presentation, and when we talked about the city regions being an economic reality, a demographic reality, a political reality, a spatial reality, one of the things which comes to our mind is it is not yet a reality in the public mind. An average citizen of Mumbai probably may say, yes, Vasai Virar is somewhere up in the north, but I do take the commuting train. Navi Mumbai is there, yes, I take a train to go there. So one can say that they have a broad idea about Mumbai metropolitan area. But the same thing cannot be said about Bangalore, for example. To the average Bangalore person, the Bangalore metropolitan region may not mean much. In the case of Calcutta, it may mean something because of the suburban railway line. To a lesser extent, as far as Chennai is concerned. So one of the major challenges which we have to face is that this metropolitan region is not yet a part of public perception. And that, I think, is a very, very major gap. And in a way, in these 2 days, that absence of a singular perception did come through in this workshop also. We alternated between the macro and the micro, the municipal and the multi-municipal, one particular service versus another service on a metropolitan scale. So I think the reality that when it comes to large city region reform, it has not yet entered the public mind. So in spite of all the effort that all of us have put in, we do have this salutary recognition at this point of time that we may have just begun. And it may require a lot of effort to establish this concept of a metropolitan region or a city region. The next is that we have also alternated about our concerns between sprawl, spread, and concentration. We also took note of the fact that in the absence of a clear public recognition, the city region can mean many things to many people. And if finding a consensus is difficult among professional people like us, it will be that much more difficult as far as the non-professionals and members of the public are concerned. At the same time, we also realized that one is not a substitute for the other, that a metropolitan area may have many small problems, many municipal problems, but that is not a substitute for the metropolitan scale, nor answering the metropolitan scale can be a substitute for the municipal issue. So in a way, and also taking a look at the constitutional side of it, and here perhaps personally, and some of you may think that this is rather cynical, this is one of the items about which within the CPR we had a lot of debate before taking up the study. And that is how outlandish, out of place, are not necessarily part of the same central theme of decentralization or the provisions with regard to the Metropolitan Planning Committee. Arun Misra said that, it's a vehicle with no fuel and just standing there on the road. And Philip Oldenburg said there is also something called an engine. That engine has not been run seriously by anyone for several years. One part of our problem was whether this constitutional prescription that has been written in the 74th Amendment has been somewhat premature. And it looks like that it is somewhat premature because there are so many other micro-level problems which continue to occupy our mind. But at the same time, the ground reality is such that these kind of agglomerations are taking a shape all over the country, and whether we like it or not, we need to do something about it. And that is where today's discussions helped a little bit. But as I said before, we have a long way to go. Since this particular session is really to get the feeling of a cross-section of participants here about what they feel and what they consider as takeaway points, I do not want to prejudge this, but we look upon this particular workshop as a very important step in our learning process. We have a suspicion that this particular geographical pattern of growth which we have been witnessing is likely to continue in this country. We have a suspicion that though we do not have the answers right now, somehow in the near future, some answers will be expected. We do feel that maybe we are reasonably sure about some measures like planning, like bringing different entities together, like taking note of the various entities, territorial and non-territorial. So, to my mind, I would say that this particular workshop has taken us on the path of learning a little bit more. But that is the process of learning all over. We have never learned anything with a dramatic flourish. And what we thought we did dramatically, the drama evaporates very soon, and then we are back to where we started. This may sound somewhat cynical, but then I would like to believe that by definition, planners and professionals and city officials, they have to alternate between what they consider as highly hopeful and what they consider as highly, dismal. The Bangalore example is a very good example. Mr. Ravindra has been trying, I don't know whether it's 4 years or 5 years or 6 years, trying to, ever since the Kasturirangan Committee report was given, and on the issues of metropolitan region and city region, even a draft bill has been prepared, but it has not been possible to introduce the draft bill in the Karnataka legislature at any time. Every time the government says we may bring that bill, something seems to happen to the government itself. And so it looks, I suggested to Ravindra jocularly last time we met, maybe we should submit these metropolitan reorganization plans to an astrological review in the first place, because it has all sorts of peculiar consequences. So, at this point of time, my summing up realization is that planners, city officials, business people, political people, journalists, we are all quarter-wise, maybe a little less than a quarter. But we are not necessarily near an answer to our basic questions, which is not such a bad thing. And that is where perhaps I think our political colleagues, and I don't know how they feel about it, our political colleagues may have an advantage, because they probably have a little more patience than all of us put together. And they may very well say, yes, we had heard this suggestion before, and if we wait long enough, we will hear some other suggestion. And then so we will see what would be an appropriate thing. Well, I will not go any further, because I don't want my own, my lack of enthusiasm, which is in sharp contrast to the amount of sweat and running about, that I do. But this is part of my survival kit. So, Mr. DeMonte, I am sorry if I have taken a few more minutes than what you, as the anchor, would have permitted. So, I would like to be in a position to rewrite at least a part of my summing up at the end of this session. Thank you.
Thank you. We were supposed to have this session televised, but I would like to pretend that it is being televised. And while rules of television, first and most important rule is that we speak briefly in sound bites. Nobody makes long speeches. This is not the time. We've had sessions. I also felt, frankly, in the previous sessions over these last 2 days, some people spoke far too long, in far too much detail. And from many, many years of professional managing of conferences such as this, mostly for environmental journalists, I feel that the richness is in the interaction between the audience and the speakers. And I do feel that there's been far too little of that interaction. So I'm going to start to ask each of the panelists to speak only in sound bites for not more than 2 minutes on a single point, which is a takeaway, either a new thought or a mode of action, something that just one point that you can suggest to the audience. I'll begin with Amita Bhide from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try to speak in a sound bite, as Darryl has suggested. Okay, but one, I think, tension which seemed to be clearly to be running through the entire workshop, and which is something that we have not expressly articulated, is the entire tension between the core and the periphery. Okay. We have been talking about city regions as the core, and those which are within, I would say, commuting distances and different concepts we have used to delineate the surrounding region as the periphery. That's how the data has also been presented. What does regional government, what does metropolitan governance mean for this periphery? Have we tried to understand it from that perspective at all? or all of it is driven by the center. Because what I see running through this entire agenda is an agenda of city expansion, which may be very, very much in furtherance of greater centralization. Centralization meaning a very different, perhaps inviting very different actors to and opening up the playing field for them. It may be in terms of real estate interests, it may be in terms of business interests, it may be in terms of, I would say, political interests which are also fueling this. But what is it that one would exactly open up through this entire field? And without, I think, answering this question of what it means for the periphery, one is moving in for, I think, a lopsided kind of a consideration of this question.
We'll follow now with Mr. Sharad Kale, who's been the Municipal Commissioner of Mumbai. He now serves on the board of Pratham, which is an organization which works in primary education to make each child beginning in Mumbai literate, or rather educated.
Every child learning.
Every child learning is the slogan. Mr. Sharad Kale.
I think with this introduction, you will excuse me concentrating on Mumbai. Mr. Sivaramakrishnan has rightly pointed out that the metropolitan region concept has not really gone into the sort of the conscience or the perception of people in general. But I think probably the situation in Mumbai is not that hopeless. People of Mumbai are aware that various problems of Mumbai cannot really be sorted out or resolved within the geographical boundaries of Mumbai city as constituted under the Mumbai Municipal Corporation Act. And many of these solutions will have to be sought beyond the boundary of Mumbai. And that is how you legitimize and actually you realize the importance of a metropolitan region. The real dilemma of a metropolitan authority, I don't think got highlighted here. The representative of MMR did mention that once the metropolitan authority starts taking up projects and concentrating on projects, there is a slight change in the nature of the relationship between the metropolitan authority and the municipal bodies which are within its jurisdiction. And smaller municipalities start to push their projects and start lobbying for them. On the other hand, if the metropolitan authority concentrates only on so-called planning and coordination, I think it almost will, sort of drop below the horizon, so to say, out of public perception. Because planning is not something that excites people. Promises do, but somehow planning doesn't. To my mind, the answer to this dilemma is that the metropolitan authorities should concentrate on what I would like to call strategic planning. What is most important for this region to become economically vibrant and to make the city and the region more livable for the people, and concentrate on those things, and then more or less prod the municipal authorities within its jurisdiction to take up activities and measures which will make transport much easier, which will bring in investment for housing, which will make water supply an easier thing to obtain. And a metropolitan authority can give regional solutions. Because after all, somebody pointed out that Mumbai gets its water from Nasik. Many people say that, but they don't count how many people from Nasik are already living in Mumbai. So It's a two-way process. We take water from there, we have got people also from there. But in any case, Bangalore said that there is no river. And for water supply, they have to look, necessarily they have to look outside Bangalore. But there will be regional solutions. Today, if you look at MMR, for instance, there is an MIDC water supply, there is a water supply for CIDCO, there is a water supply for Navi Mumbai, there are water supply schemes of Mumbai Corporation, Thane Municipal Corporation. But maybe if they all come together, the situation could be still better than what it is. It is also the same case in case of waste management. If there can be a common regional kind of a solution, it will be much better than each municipality trying to arrive at its own solution. So if the Metropolitan Authority would concentrate on strategic planning, I think it is possible that the usefulness of a metropolitan region and authority will sort of get to the conscience of the citizens of that region. And anything that is found useful, then only I think it will get a political recognition also. Some kind of a nod, political nod will be there. Right now, politicians are, of course, giving attention to MMR, but that is more because of various region-wise projects like the monorail, the metro rail, and of course, the land development. But I think strategic planning is something that needs to be concentrated upon by the regional authorities. I will stop here because there are many other persons to speak and many other issues to speak on.
So, Mr. Kale, Desai, who heads MASTEK, if I recall correctly, MASTEK developed the software for the congestion tax in London. So things are being done in London, which should be done in the very city in which he lives in. And I hope he'll tell us some more or advocate something about that. Mr. Ashank Desai.
Give me 2 minutes plus another 30 seconds. I'll just carry that thought
You
further.
have it. You have it.
When Prince Charles came, that's what he asked me when I presented to him, that why are you not doing here? So I said, I need some more friends in government who are interested in it. So anyway. But the point I'm making is 2 points. What Sivaramakrishnan made as public mind, I'm coming here a business person, as an entrepreneur who came with nothing in this city. And we are one of the top 10, 15, 20 companies in the country. In Maharashtra itself will be in top 3, 4. The point I'm making is, what do we mean, what this region means to me as a business person is all that I will talk about. And I'll take also the point that Marco from Indonesia made, and I was clarifying also with him that supply side is not organized and what it means. And what I will say is, what has worked for IT industry and what has not worked for IT industry in this city, and specifically for MASTEK. I don't know how many of you know that the revolution of software didn't start in Bangalore. It started 36 kilometers from here in a place called SIBS, Santa Cruz Export Processing Zone. However, whatever happened, I am not going to comment how happened, what happened, but we did not take that opportunity. We as in city, as in state, and whole thing went out of this city. Otherwise, this would have been the Bangalore for the country. I am very sure of it. There is nothing that we lack here. What was lacked was foresight, planning, and thought to retain the industry here. So that's at a much larger point I'm saying. So there is definitely a failure of planning here, and planning at a regional level, because it was not about city of Mumbai. It is about Navi Mumbai, it is about Vasai, it is about Alibag. We could have expanded all over the place to allow IT industry to flourish. But we as an industry decided to get out of the city. And today it is no more anyway number 1, but it is number 4, 5, or wherever it sits in terms of size of the IT industry. Now, if I look at it from the other side, that where it has worked is that my company went from Sibs to Navi Mumbai because government thought about building a millennium park for IT industry. And if they had not done that, I would have moved out of Maharashtra more quickly than what I have moved out. So in a way, planning and looking at the whole region seems to have worked. So if I talk of public mind of Sivaramakrishnan, I do see some planning happening. Some thought was given, but was not adequate. But something did happen in terms of planning. Navi Mumbai happened, transport happened around it, Airoli Bridge happened, otherwise I would not have gone, and so on. This story is long, I will not talk. So what has worked, but worked very partially, is this concept of Navi Mumbai and a larger region has helped us. But much more than that could have been done, is the point I am making here. Now, when I say much more, it is about the cost of living in the city is high, transport is not good at all, and so on and so forth. We know all the big problems in the city. If they had planned it properly, the IT industry would have remained here. Because I find extremely difficult to get people from other cities here. They ask higher salary, they ask the cost of living is high, etc., etc., etc. So I think somewhere we missed, because of lack of planning, all these opportunity of creating millions and millions of jobs. My company created 15,000 jobs, but we are moving out of the city, moving out of the state because of all these issues that we felt. Now let me come back to the supply side organization that Marco talked. There are few things we in IT industry did which changed the landscape of the northern part of Mumbai. I don't know how many of you know it, in JVLR, it is IT industry who took a lead because it mattered to us. Chief Secretary we met. So there are some things that you could do, and IT industry's example is one good example, that you could organize yourself and make change happen. And that is possible to make, and there are a lot of examples that I can tell you. The limited time won't allow me to say that. So there is an opportunity to organize by private sector to make change happen, and we should be doing it at a regional level, and we could do it. And there are good examples to do it. Taking it further, of course, Mumbai first is a good example of moving it still further, but I'll stop here. So what I'm saying is, from businessman's perspective, it has worked, but worked very, very partially, and not to the full extent.
We'll now be joined by Mr. MP Vasimalai from the DHAN Foundation in Madurai.
Listening last 2 days, I think the point here is how do we create a demand-driven megacity governance? I think we talk about as an intellectual process, and we feel there is a need for it. But are the people are ready, the community is ready in this region? Are they really aware of it? I think the main point is, are there community space? Is it social capital for this governance is ready, which is really the building blocks which can sustain it once it's really created. Otherwise, we may really create like a 74th Amendment. Is there enabling environment is already there? Who creates that? I think otherwise this discussion will be in this room only. How this idea is going to emanate from the demand-driven process, like Marco was talking about it. So I think that's where we need to really, from now on, to initiate such a kind of processes in those kind of mega cities. What is the really feeling there? Are they really want this? And is it going to create a better situation? So the enabling environment of creating community space, and my experience is that excellent community space already there. There is a disconnect. I think there are self-help groups, there are welfare associations. Many of these forms are there, but they are not able to connect here with interesting mechanisms. Otherwise, we talk at the air and making a plan, strategic planning, everything, unless who is going to implement that. So I think the building block is going to be from the Ward Sabha and Mahasabha, or a kind of area Sabha, which has to really build on with the connectivity of this system. So I think from now on, we should concentrate on the building the demand system.
We'll be followed by Mike Douglas, who's an American, but he's now at the National University of Singapore. Mike.
Thank you very much. You know, we often say that the devil is in the details. I think India has too many details. And when you're clearing the underbrush, sometimes you get lost in it. So I think the demand's already been stated, and we've just been saying it's only supply side. So I'm more positive than you are in this regard. Interestingly, the demand tends to come from women more than men, but I won't go into that too much here. So what is this demand? The demand is for, at one level, the idea of the city that we haven't really talked about. I see a lot of confusion in that regard. So many people started off their presentations about the city's now producing X% of the GDP and all that. A very materialistic, very functional, instrumental idea of the city. I think we have to return to a much more socially embracing idea of the city, a city that is based on what's currently quite prominent these days, the right to the city, or in this case, the right to the megacity region. And that would include, in my terms, the right to be included in a public realm, which means that we have the right to a public city, not a private city, a public city. We have the right to a livable city. We have a right to a humane city. We have a right to contribute to aspirations, to have hopes and dreams. And we have a right, the most fundamental of all, the right to change the city. In this regard, I think, in contrast to an earlier speaker, it's not about objectives so much, it's about the process, about how we engage in getting to those objectives that are defined always dynamically in a process. And so what this all comes down to is trying to get this group together. In my mind, I think there's something called the Mumbai Declaration, in which you had a working group that would construct this. It would set forth the principles of the rationale, the justification for a mega city region. Clearly, it's defense. And then to go forward with it, I think you have to take the consensus, what I perceive as consensus here, that it has to be built from the bottom up, through coalitions, through a very participatory and necessarily messy process that will filter up and make decisions that are region-wide. So where's an entry point for this? I think it's been stated again, Marco gets a lot of reference these days, but environment is the easiest one to start with. The ecology of urban regions is under threat. In Asia as a whole, the urbanization process is coastal. And now we're seeing agglomerations of 30 million, or if you look at southern China, 100 million people in harm's way. In such agglomerations and such intensity that it demands attention. So one of the easier ways to start this larger discourse is about environment. Thank you.
I'd just like to add that we are perhaps one of the few, if not the only city in the world, if you take Greater Mumbai, which is 480 square kilometers, which has a national park, which is 120, 130 square, 1/4 of the city proper is a national park, to which you cannot enter into the core. We are followed by another Mike now, Mike Raco from University College London.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to come again. And the brief for this session was to say something about what you go away with as a speaker, and come away with from what you've heard. And I guess I just want to make a slightly bigger point, which is that one thing I will come away with is the fact that I've been privileged to be here in the world's biggest democracy, and it feels democratic, and there's argument and there's debate. And so one of the things I feel about this country very much is that it matters in geopolitical terms what happens here. It matters how you do things. What you do in the future will make a difference to countries elsewhere enormously in terms of the role model that you set. So I kind of feel that some of the discussion we had yesterday about public-private partnership, about huge investments in infrastructure, water, energy, education, everything. These things are things that are globally significant, and I think the way in which you do things in India will have repercussions for elsewhere. And I guess in that sense, I would just take the British case and other cases and just maybe caution about the way in which one can be seduced by fantasies of private sector simplification, seduced by the notion of partnership and consensus. I think if you believe in democracy, you believe in debate and you believe in argument, and you believe in demands, and you take demands as the basis from which you make political decisions through which some win and some lose. And you make it very clear that when you do things, there are losers always, as well as winners. And the fantasy that we can live in a consensus, build around some participatory structure where we will all gain, all benefit, and it will be win, win, win is a nonsense. So I think that the thing that I would come away with is an argument to believe in democracy, believe in the state, actually, believe in planning. You wanted sound bites, I mean,
Last but by no means least, I mean, in the reversing the normal order of things, we have our MP with us, please. I don't know if you heard the brief, which was what single point would you take away from all the discussions we've heard?
Thank you very much for the opportunity, but we had enough of hearing. But let us sit down to work out a proposal which I am trying to suggest for this August House to consider is the astronomical growth of the city. More particularly Bangalore, for the last decade, it is 46.6% growth. But infrastructural and environmental impact on this population, we have not taken care of, or we have not planned enough to accommodate such a growth. So some sort of an arrangement has to be made to see that the growth is contained. And what for they come to the city? Are they come in search of jobs? Do they come in search of higher education, or they come in search of providing facilities to the people? So many ideas come to our mind, but one thing is set, that once they get into the city and its attractions, they will not get back. So my suggestion to this Honorable House for consideration is that to stop this mad rush, like we can take the universities outside the city purview, we can take out the industries outside the purview of the city to the best of our possibilities. And particularly in a rushed area, we should see that the residents are quietly moved out of the city, some peaceful places. We thought of a green belt long ago, but now the green belt is left only in the name, but the entire land is swallowed by the people. And permissions after permissions have been granted by the elected governments, local governments. So therefore, some sort of a planning is necessary to contain the rush to the city. I hope that it's a very large and a question pending for the last so many years to come, and it will remain some more years. So my point is to see that the city's attractions, in whatever the manner it is possible, can it be decentralized or taken out of the city. Thank you.
I hope I'm not intruding on Casey's territory, but it's my knowledge that actually India's urbanization is by no means rapid if it's compared to Latin American and African rates. If you take our own city where we are sitting now, my own city, it is decelerating. In the last census from 2001, 2011, it's only grown by 5 lakhs. So it's decelerating. And it's not that we have tried to make Mumbai any less attractive. The fact is that people don't come for the bright lights of the city. They are pushed out of rural areas in search of jobs. Now there are no jobs since the mills and all industries have closed in Mumbai. IT sector is moving out. And since there are no jobs, the population is decelerating. In fact, the natural increase now is 60% of the total population, as against and 40% is migration in the 60s, it was just the reverse. I'm taking the liberty also of mentioning, I saw that when Nasir Munji mentioned the single street or area, Hazrat Ganj, this morning, people were interested in a small micro improvement. So I'm taking the liberty of citing some that I have been associated with. One is just outside this window here, which is the area, this most iconic image of Mumbai, which is the Gateway of India. There used to be a quite incongruous lawn which was locked off to the public. And with great difficulty in a democratic system such as Mike Raco was referring, we fought each round of the way through many vested interests, fellow planners, architects, heritage enthusiasts, and we removed that garden. And now you can see that it can seat in a concert, despite security concerns now, it can seat 3,000 or 4,000 people, and it's one of the, certainly the most iconic image of Mumbai. But apart from that, in the suburb where I live in Bandra, we actually, citizens, have built with public funds and MPs' funds 2 promenades which we maintain on a daily basis. We have cultural events there, and it's areas which we can claim the citizens have won back from the city. In Juhu, which is the great beach recreation spot, we've been able to move the hawkers who are blocking the view at the main gap and move them to a place. So we have restored Juhu to what citizens have been wanting for many years. But these are just micro examples of things that can be done even in a city like this. I would like to ask whether before I throw it open, or maybe I will throw it open, then go back to the panel. Can anybody who would like to respond to any of the panelists, please? And please introduce yourself again.
Yeah, from Indian Institute of Public Administration, New Delhi. As you said rightly, sir, I would just mention 2 points. One, that we time and again discussed Metropolitan Planning Committee, Article 243ZE. And in the last session, it was emphasized that we have failed to implement whatever may be the focus of this 243ZE. So that we have not been able to implement. There are several reasons, several lacunas. That is a separate matter of debate. Second, whatever we have discussed since last 2 days is fairly diverse and much more. The scope is much more than planning alone. We have focused on governance of megacity regions, which is much more than planning alone only. So the time has come to rethink or redesign or have a relook on 243ZE in the context of governance as a whole, not planning alone.
We'll take 2-3 questions and come back. Please.
Hi, I'm Vaidehi. I'm from the Department of Economics, Mumbai University. And my question is for Mr. Sivaramakrishnan. I would like to ask that, is a political entity at a metropolitan level a necessity? Because one finds that perhaps the costs for setting up a 4th tier would be significantly high. On the other hand, having a polycentric governance system where you have multiple independent decision-making bodies at different scales and scopes has certain advantages in terms of creating checks and balances or being more democratic or allowing for flexibility in production of public goods and services. So should the stress be on creation of incentive-compatible rules or for strengthening the existing rules so as to empower the urban local bodies and also enable efficiency-enhancing competition and coordination between different public organizations, that is enabling a second-order collective action, so to speak, so as to internalize externalities and also for providing services that have an impact at a metropolitan level. So in other words, what should be the way forward? Should it be a metropolitan government or a better metropolitan governance system is what I want to ask.
Is there somebody else? Anita, please.
You know, there has been...
Please introduce yourself again and your NGO.
There has been a...
Please introduce yourself and your NGO.
My name is Anita, and I head Pukar, a research, independent research collective which is based in Mumbai. You know, there has been a lot of talk about making some of our cities global cities, and a lot of policies have been planned and strategically executed to make arrangements for this global vision. And the question I have to everybody is, has that vision been actually the hurdle in planning an inclusive cities? And if you look at all the 5 cities we have been discussing last 2 days, everywhere more and more gated communities are coming up. There is more and more segregation between poor and rich, which was not so, at least in Mumbai, I would say 30 years ago. So I just wanted to know if this strategic global planning is the reason we are seeing this kind of a segregation, at least in Mumbai, but I know such is truth as also in Bangalore and in Hyderabad. We are seeing lot and lot of gated communities coming up where poor people cannot access these areas. And lot of these gated communities actually take public spaces and then make them private spaces which cannot be accessed by other people of the city. So the right to city actually gets decreased for many poor people of the city.
I think the first interjection was just observation. So Casey, will you like to answer from the lady from the Department of Economics?
One question about whether a political entity is needed. What we meant in the CPR report as a political entity is that we know the union is a political entity, the state is a political entity, the municipality is a political entity. But then if you have a big metropolitan area, it cannot be merely a committee. A committee as such is not regarded as a political entity. It is a creature of another political entity, namely the state government. So this is really an invitation to think about this. If it is possible for us to come up with a system which actually performs the functions of the political entity, that is okay. But if that is not the case, then you may need some kind of an entity. What should its relationship with the other political entities should be? And as far as cost is concerned, I don't think it is such an issue, because the people are already doing those kinds of work. And I don't think that that by itself will add to the cost. And I think the other point that Anita made, we have referred to it in our report, but this is also something that requires some thinking. We find that many of these cities, their growth, their recent growth, economic growth, is due to their international connections, their engagement with the international trade and international manufacturing. And it is quite possible that by opening your gates to a global access, you may be closing some gates within yourself. It's quite possible, but that is also an issue. So I think what one is trying to say here is it possible for us to give some thinking? For instance, in the case of Hyderabad, though the act has not been fully implemented, the Hyderabad Metropolitan Development Authority Act as such comes very close to some kind of an entity. But in some other cases, as in Chennai or Kolkata, it is not so. It is just a committee, a sort of a creature, a subordinate organization. That's what we meant. But there could be alternatives, but unless we think through and unless we are reasonably clear what are the tasks that this particular level will need to fulfill, we will not be clear about what it should be called.
My recent writing is about Globopolis. This is coming through. Globopolis versus Cosmopolis. And what you're getting is Globopolis, which is an unequal city, a undemocratic city, and a privatizing city. Unfortunately, for me at least, gated housing is a worldwide trend. It's happening in every country in the world, even the poorest and the richest. Some interesting news, though, our friend Myron's not here, but Minnesota actually is banning gated housing. So it's possible that through public policy, you can do that. And let me just reiterate what's at stake, or a way to enter this, again, is the idea of the city. The idea of the city is a social experience with loving and caring and associational life. If we can't have that as a solid core, we're going to be deflected into other ideologies that talk about competitiveness and tall buildings and all that.
Yeah, sure. Amita.
Just one small interjection. And I want to just combine some 2-3 thoughts, one coming from Mike and perhaps one which earlier came from Mr. Kale. And where I'm coming from in terms of even talking about this core periphery issue is that basically before even conceptualizing a form of regional government, we need to make the experience of the city a real experience for those also in the periphery. See, the way we conceptualize even strategic thinking is of using the core in terms of we need to dump waste, hey, we need excess land for so and so activity. It's in those kind of terms. We need to get water from here, etc., etc. But I think talking about regional solutions, so I really kind of thoroughly agree with Mr. Kale's suggestion that the way forward perhaps is through strategic planning, and strategic planning not in the way we have started to think in our context, which is largely about how to just attract business, not just about that. I think it's an important part, but I think there are several other stakeholders in the city, and therefore, how does one make this experience true, live, kicking for each one of them? Is the experience of education, is the experience of healthcare, and I think when the region becomes live in people's minds, I think that is the time which is ripe for thinking about a regional political entity. Till that time, I think we'll need to perhaps go much more by that negotiated compromise kind of a manner which was suggested to us by our South African friends.
I was talking to Andrew Thornley last night, and I told him that Mumbai was the first city that the Urban Age initiative run by the Deutsche Bank and out of the London School of Economics chose for its award. And some of the projects I mentioned, we are the co-sharers of that award. So we went to Sao Paulo, we won the award in 2000, we shared the award in 2007. In 2008, we went to Sao Paulo for its award. And there was a very telling slide which planners and architects show, which is on one side of the slide, the picture, there are slums. In the middle is a highway, and on the third are very high buildings. Nobody can tell which city in the world that is. It could be Mumbai, it could be, it happened to be Caracas, but it could have been any city in many parts of the world. It's a terrifying thought. But I would like to come back to the question of the global cities as a hurdle to Mike Raco, because in this city, you've heard references to mill land, which was 600 acres of land. But the port is also in decline, and that's 3 times the area, 1,800 acres. And there's a great debate within us. There are people who are in the debate. If Nasser is here, he's there at the back. So we have also taken a cue from what Mrs. Thatcher did in the Docklands, which is to remove all norms of planning whatsoever and allow the free market to take place, leading to at least one big company to go bankrupt. So maybe he would like to tell us from London, is the idea of a global city a help or a hurdle, Mike?
Interesting question. I mean, the London dock, you just say about the London Docklands, that's a complete fantasy. I mean, the Docklands, it's argued that some people argue, people like Roger Lee, for example, at Queen Mary University, argues that for every pound of private investment in the London Docklands, there's at least 4, maybe even 7 pounds of public investment through the infrastructure that's gone in. So it is actually a form of public subsidy to a small number of private investors. I think it's get away from the nonsense that it's a market-driven, free market-driven development. It isn't at all. It's actually a form of redistribution. And I think just a couple of points on that global city aspect. I mean, again, the fantasy of the global city is so powerful, and it kind of worries me a little bit. I mean, that's the points that are made there, the excellent points about then what kind of urbanism you get from that, and the way in which a form of inequality is justified through its ability to transform an economy. In other words, the arguments have been reversed from the 1980s, where we saw gentrification as a problem. Increasingly, it's seen as a solution, because people say you need more inequality in order to bring in the creative workers, because Richard Florida tells us in his fantasies that that's how economies now work, and therefore we must accept inequality as the price for growth. I think this is extraordinary. So we see across cities across the world a form of trickle-up going on in gigantic terms. People like Nicholas Shaxson, the author, argues that 1/3 of global GDP could be tied up in overseas tax havens. In other words, places that are off the radar for all of us and actually taken by a tiny minority of people. And this kind of form of capitalism is supported by a global city fantasy that is promoted. And I think it's critical that the kind of debate goes on here to challenge some of that and challenge the way in which some of that works. I'll give you the example of gated communities is a brilliant one, because in fact, there's some interesting research coming out from the US and elsewhere showing that they are more dangerous than inside than being outside of a gated community. It's actually a form of voluntary incarceration, because most people suffer from domestic violence rather than public violence. So if you lock people away, they lock themselves into a domestic space, violence goes up. People like Roland Atkinson in his research has shown that murder rates are higher, for example, because most people are killed in the home. It's a really interesting kind of discourse there then about what a gated community is and the nonsense about gated being safer and everything else. Even in its own terms, it kind of falls down. And yet, you know, where do those kind of understandings come into debates about global cities? The price we have to pay for a global city, a successful city, is that you have these sort of spaces and enclaves for some people to promote their skills and their knowledge and their wealth, and we all benefit from that. And it's critical, I think, that that's taken on, absolutely.
I'd like to add, though, just very quickly, that's one model of a global city. We could have another one. So my argument would be, it's not anti-global, it's anti what you're getting global. And there's many other ways forward to link up and not just close the door and shut yourself down.
Take some more questions. Well, yeah, please. Do reintroduce yourself.
I'm Ravindra, I'm Urban Advisor to the Chief Minister, Karnataka. Speaking about global cities, say global city need not necessarily be a megacity. A city that increases merely in size and population doesn't really acquire a global status. For instance, Bangalore, even before when it was half the size of the population as it is now, 4 million or so, had achieved global status because of its IT strength. It was called the IT capital of India. And even it is also classified as a world technological hub. And the other technological hub is next to impossible situation. Urbanization is an irreversible process. But what can be done is to see how we regulate the process of urbanization. And maybe a mega or a metropolitan region gives us a kind of an opportunity. So now we talk about, smart cities and eco-cities. A few of them have come up. Using technology particularly So in a metropolitan region, you can identify certain areas or certain small towns where people can be attracted to that area. I mean, investment should go to that region rather than to the core city. I think that is a big challenge. So that is where I say, I mean, what is the objective of your metropolitan region, the government, the committee, what is the role they should play? It's not merely a spatial entity, but if you look at it from the economic development point of view, see in India, in the urban parlance, we don't talk about local economic development as it is done in Europe and American cities. So local economic development within the region, whether it is 4,000 square kilometers, 8,000 and all, gives you an opportunity to decongest the major city and develop new towns where people can come and settle.
Please.
My name is V. Suresh. One dimension that seems to have missed in the session earlier, and from what I heard from various speakers, is a larger dimension of the environment, ecology, as well as energy. The greening of the cities has now become an increasingly large dimension. The integrated water management, energy management, waste management, and the low carbon footprints that are required to be brought for city life in a large way. It's slowly catching up. The message is coming at the level of the local building level, the green buildings, but it's getting into neighborhoods and later on at the level of the city development process. Primarily, it is utilizing all the natural resources in an optimum, efficient and economic manner so that we should not take away all the resources by which, as a sustainable development process, for some reason, we talked of the road, the metro, all the larger component there. But in all these particular area, what is it going to be its impact on the overall environment of now, not just the city alone, now it's going to be the mega city region. As Ma'am Rice said, there's a core and that's the periphery. Periphery was pretty good on the environmental side, but when you start getting into the development over there, the urban agriculture, all those related areas will have a major impact. I just wanted to bring this one additional dimension of energy, environment, ecology as a larger component of development of the megacity region. Thank you.
As I mentioned yesterday, Mumbai is spending $4 to $5 billion US dollars, 30,000 crores on only road schemes, which cater to the needs of just 8% of the commuting public. Mumbai used to have the highest percentage of people in the world, 87% using public transport. It's now come down now. And that's another story. Yes, please, can you answer some? Yeah, please.
Sorry, can you hear me? I just wanted to take on that technology dimension that was talked about by Shri. Right. I think we always think in terms of physical infrastructure, which is required, of course, but I think we need to move forward to leverage tomorrow's technologies, which are already happening today, to make megacity happen. I'll give you an example, and somebody will say, of course, technology is only for haves and not have-nots. Yesterday, we were sitting with Chief Secretary of the state, and there were some health initiatives that are being taken by many, many NGOs and many others, are using technology in such a beautiful and nice way to help downtrodden people, a farmer, a laborer, regarding various issues. I'll not get into the details of it. So I think here is an opportunity to elevate some of the issues that we are talking through technology. Second issue, various issues of demand that we talked about, the organizing demand, etc. Today, social technology, Facebooks of this world and Twitters are making, as all of you know, many organized demand happen in real time. And there is in fact a case study which I heard not in India but in Switzerland about what happened in Mangalore when there was this case of, sorry, I forget. How few ladies got together from this and Pink Chaddi. So that Pink Chaddi case is a very good example.
Just to explain to our guests.
Yeah, sir, maybe.
Chaddi is underwear.
Underwear.
women started sending the organization pink underwear.
And he was flooded with whatever, millions of them. The point I'm making is, I think, of course, citizens will use technologies in whatever way they can, but we need to build smart cities to make it happen. And today, and I was talking to Minister also, that today and JNURM and all these issues talk more about physical infrastructure. They talk about health education also maybe. But the point I'm making is building smart city is not only the hardware part and software part, which is important, but it is also of organizing it. You need today CIO for a mega city. And you will need them, you will see them in many mega cities coming up because they will look at the whole IT infrastructure for the city. So it is not just municipality CIO, it's one level above to look at everything around the city. So beyond water and many other things that of course we all need for day-to-day living, we'll need a utility called IT, which will help us to live a much better life.
Are there any more questions, comments? Yes, Kunti, please. Introduce yourself.
Well, I represent here Bombay First and even Clean Mumbai Foundation. I would like to say that going through these 2 days, can we come to one strategy for all the 5 cities which we have discussed from India, that what Bombay requires the most, like governance in slum problem, for example, Bangalore in waste management, Chennai in something else, and let us move towards it to improve our governance so that we at least achieve something in one sphere or list out a few problems or few topics per city in priorities, and I would like to do, I would be very happy that something like that comes out. Thank you.
Before I turn it back to Casey, would any of the panelists please?
I just wanted to say 2 things. One, you mentioned that road systems cater only to 8% of the people, which is not true because the road system is also used by the BST buses. No, not the ceiling, if you don't allow it. That's the question. Flyovers also, initially they were not allowed. Eventually they were allowed. So, in fact, this so-called this Trans-Harbour link was originally meant also to have a railway. Now, unfortunately, I understand that it is going to be only for the cars. And then it's a question whether that huge investment is really justified, but that's a separate issue. Second, there has been a lot of talk about this demand for, whether is there a demand for metropolitan government and is there a demand for decentralization. I think that if we go back to our development administration in India, it started with Mr. S.K. Day and the community development. Was there a demand at that time for setting up national exchange CD blocks and creating structures at the block level? Maybe not. There was not a vocal demand. But I think we should not ignore the silent aspirations of people for exercising their authority or their contribution to community development. And that is how we went actually initially from advisory committees to blocks. We went to a regular elected Panchayat Samiti, then to elected Jila Parishads. I don't think there was a great demand being made, but it was understood by the politicians of that era, including the person Mr. Yashwantrao Chauhan, who is responsible for the decentralization in Maharashtra, and these structures were established and they have proved their utility. So maybe there is probably some such unarticulated aspiration for that metropolitan or regional government, which one must respond to it with a right type of institution, and maybe it will catch up at that time. Thank you.
We won't go into detail because it's a fag end, but I'm sure our guests on my left could tell us that all over the world, they are pulling down flyovers and stopping ceilings.
I'm not defending flyover.
No. The fact remains.
Use of roads by BST buses.
The BST buses use the Bandra-Valli sea link very, very seldom, and of 1,600 crores worth of investment, there is a estimated usage now of 125,000 cars a day. Only 75,000 cars are using it. In other words, public is subsidizing motorists.
Because sea link was not built by the corporation.
No, it's
You
not a
were
question
on
of
the-
the
you were on the
corporation.
corporation.
The city has got the link. Anyway, we will not go into this. It's the missing link. Casey, please. It's the missing link. There are many missing links in the city. Casey, please.
Do I move on to the wrap-up part? Yeah. All right. Well, I must say that my own reservations and concurrent level of dissatisfaction is partially reduced by the comments I've heard during this round table. One of the objectives in our taking up this exercise was we ought to go through this question. Do we need a metropolitan level? And is that taken as a common accepted level for all these cities? Are there alternatives? And secondly, we also felt that certain questions needed to be asked, which you have asked, which we have also asked in our report. Are there certain services, certain requirements which are better performed at the metropolitan level? And if that does not happen, they will go by default. So that's why, what Emilio mentioned the other day, that it took us 600 pages to reach that conclusion, because we went through all these 5 cities and said, what are the things which can perhaps be done better at the metropolitan level and can therefore subserve the sub-metropolitan also. So I think that assessment, has to be gone through. Unfortunately, the constitutional amendment, in spite of all the statements we make, if you read the latest plan document, you'll find we have now realized that one shoe does not fit all. But still the government works overtime producing single-size shoe for everybody, whether you like it or not. Unfortunately, this Metropolitan Committee prescription also is a single-size shoe. If you are 1 million people, you jolly well have a Metropolitan Planning Committee. And I must say that I was one of the enthusiastic cobblers who supported that single-size shoe. And it has required, it's a very expensive process, it has required some 12, 13 years of search and a fairly expensive study like what CPR has done for me to realize that I was mistaken. So now I think that is a very important issue. What is the need and what is the pattern that we should really follow? Well, from that point of view, I'm very happy. When we thought of having this particular workshop and bringing different people together, initially we thought, being Delhiwalas, we should have that seminar in Delhi. And I must say that Nimesh Kampani said, you want to talk about Mumbai sitting in Delhi? You want to talk about Chennai and Bombay and Kolkata sitting in Delhi? So you can go and talk for all your length and nobody will be coming. So we said, all right, let us come and sort of do it here. So from that point of view, it has been very, very, very useful. And therefore, I will just take a few minutes. I think we have been very fortunate in getting the support of several people, the CII and Adi Godrej and the people in the CII, Rajesh Menon, Manvendra, Mohan Gowda and various others. Also, the Bombay First, Narendra Nair and myself have been on phone conversation a few times. The Rockefeller Foundation, which assisted us. And I'm very happy that all this made our international participants to take the trouble and come here. I'm very, very happy that they responded to our invitation. It's possible that some of them in the course of their journeys might have been forced to relearn their geography, but notwithstanding that, they are all arrived. At this moment, as of now, there appears to be only one temporary casualty, that's Myron Orfield. The chap is not feeling too well. Obviously, he found the intensity of debate, this morning too much for him to take, so he's taking it easy, but it has been very wonderful to have all the international participants. And the Center for Policy Research, one of the advantages of that institution is that it spans all ages. We have got about 5 or 6 people who are above 75, and we have got a lot of people who are 35 and below and in between. And so I have been particularly fortunate in having a very young and enthusiastic team to help me. My colleague, Dr. Partha Mukhopadhyay, I see glimpses of him on the veranda. I don't know whether he is in the veranda or outside the veranda right now. But, I mean, everyone knows Partha. And
Preceded by his beer.
Okay, yes, that's right. So Partha Mukhopadhyay and then Anant Maringanti, is he around? And there he is. And so these two people, plus helped by a lot of others, our team is all around that table, and they have been trying very, very hard to do 2 things. One is to encourage me in all my foolish hypotheses in the hope that after some time I will give it up. By and large, they have succeeded. They have also technologically upgraded. Mr. Desai should not get offended. As a result of my young team, I managed to learn the art of a tablet within 24 hours, but I also managed to lose that whole tablet in London, of all places. So, no, I said I managed to understand the use of a tablet. So I took it one morning and then I went off to London. At that night, it was stolen from me. So it was a fairly intense learning process, but they have been trying very hard. They don't give up. They keep on technologically upgrading me, all the time. So my young team is very much there. I'm absolutely delighted that they are all here, and they have been a very great help. And of course, by now, you would not, everyone would have come in contact with Gitanjali. I suppose for the next several days, Gitanjali may wake up at some odd hour saying, we haven't got your itinerary yet. Or you may wake up in a hard hour and say, I have not got my ticket yet. So it's quite possible some of those things can happen. I am particularly grateful to the team at Taj Hotel, and most importantly, all the participants from within the country, from different cities. I may be wrong, but usually an urban seminar of any kind, usually it comprises the people who are sort of certified members of that particular clan. But this is about the most mixed group of urban discussions that we've had. We've had people, journalists, as I said, and people from other branches of development, academics, city officials, businessmen, and so on. So it has been a very, very useful session. The Center for Policy Research, because we have existed for nearly 40 years, we are a pretty obstinate lot. And our reputation is that we do not give up easily. So you must be prepared that from time to time, we'll be attacked by one more burst of obstinacy. And it's quite possible that we may visit upon you, something more, in the hope that, it'll stimulate some more debate. We certainly have much work ahead of us. And as someone who has tried to retire for the past 20 years without success, it looks like that there is no imminent danger of my retiring. It looks like that the extension of my employment will continue with studies of this kind, huh? So I have very little. I'm grateful for Darryl De Monte. We have known each other for a long time, and also I'm glad that I can at least see Jason from a distance. And by and large, this city has treated me with some kindness and indulgence, and I'm very happy that you welcomed us all, and it's been very, very useful. I thank all my colleagues, and I certainly thank the members of Parliament, and in particular, Ajay Makan, because I think this is one of those few occasions when members of Parliament have found that discussion about cities is not such a waste of their time. And that is not bad. Otherwise, you know, civil servants are always accused of being a hierarchical lot. But I must say, with all due respect, Mr. Gowda, the political class also has its hierarchy. And therefore, members of Parliament and members of Assembly and corporators, they also view each other in terms of a certain hierarchy. And if we have to jump hierarchy and meet people on a horizontal level of equality, so can the MPs. And I think that has been demonstrated. Thanks very much, really, to Mr. Ajay Makan. And I think he was highly enthusiastic. And I must say that I don't go to the Nirman Bhavan, which used to be my previous office for a long, long time. But on the few occasions where I have been recently, I was very much infected by Mr. Ajay Makan's enthusiasm, and I think it is largely his effort that made all these MPs come together. So thank you very, very much, and I hope you find this experience useful.